Hey, movie fans, and welcome back to another episode of the Uncharted Media Podcast. This is episode 63, our final episode, if you will, leading up to the rise of Skywalker. This week, we will be covering the sequel trilogy, the most divisive sequel trilogy, but let's be honest, everything about Star Wars is divisive these days. Josh let me know that he will not be with us this week. He's got something very important work-related, but once again, rounding out the trilogy, we'll call it the Michael trilogy. Michael, welcome back. How are you doing this week?
Oh, that's very kind of you. I'm good, man. Thanks for having me back. It's been a privilege hanging out with you this holiday season, covering Star Wars, all things Star Wars in our opinions. So looking forward to getting this out of the way, and because tonight, as we're recording this, is the red carpet premiere of Rise of Skywalker. Looking forward to that. I'll have to say I'm a little nervous. I'm getting that little bit of buzz. So, I'm so happy that you have me back here. I'm really looking forward to the discussion tonight.
Yeah, me too. I'm very much curious about the online reactions tonight and kind of staying off but staying on to see the early reactions.
Oh yeah.
Before we get started, Heather and I saw a movie over the weekend, so I kind of want to give my brief thoughts and opinions on Jumanji: The Next Level. So, I was very late to the party with the first one. I only saw it actually maybe a month or two ago, believe it or not, the first, well, quote-unquote, the first Jumanji, if you really want to be picky, the second Jumanji. And I really, really enjoyed it, actually. So my expectations were pretty high for this, The Next Level. And I'll say, I think I actually like this Jumanji more than I like the first movie.
All right. Oh, that's fantastic.
I really, really enjoyed this second one. It is a really good time. You kind of get from the trailers that there's some body swapping that happens. That's part of it, but all the actors in it have a lot of fun with it. And the addition of Danny DeVito and Danny Glover, not Donald Glover, the addition of their characters add this fun new dynamic, and their characters are a lot of fun to be with. Without dipping into spoilers, there was a character that was one of my favorites, if not my favorite character from the first movie, that I was kind of up in the air if they were going to bring that character back, and sure enough, they did, and I really like how they incorporated that character. The humor really, really works. I think this is a funnier film than the first one, and I laughed pretty hard in the first one. Humor's funnier, the action's better, it's just incredibly well done. I had a really great time with it. I really, really enjoyed it, and I hope to see it again after I see Knives Out again, obviously.
Well, I'm curious, what exactly, because I saw Jumanji, I was late to the party too. I watched it with my dad last summer at some point, and, we had a time of our lives, because we just had no expectations. We were looking for a film just to kind of watch VOD, and we had an amazing time, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get out to theaters to see this, but it sounds like it's worth going then.
Yes, I would recommend it. Okay. If you're on the fence at all, or if you like the first one, I can't guarantee that you'll like it more than the first one, but I think you'll like it. If you like the first one, you will at least get enjoyment out of the second one, if not be on par with it.
Okay. What is there anything that surprised you about, like from a technicality standpoint, and how this wasn't plagued by sequelitis, so to speak?
It keeps it fresh. There's they don't really rehash a lot. They do, but they don't. Like, they already kind of assume that you've seen the first one, so they don't have that training phase, if we will, of that first level of we need to explain everything. They just kind of drop you right back into it. I'm just like, all right, we know the drill, you know the drill, let's move on. All right. But also, I thought by the end of the second one that, all right, this is good, but I don't really know where the franchise is going to go with this. I'm not going to say what they do, but they do something in the mid-credits that makes me immediately interested in another one. Of, okay, you guys have figured out a way to keep this fresh. You know what you guys have planned for the next one.
Well, I've heard that same sentiment been shared around the internet as well, which is encouraging to hear. I know that the box office performance was quite higher, at least in this first weekend, than its first one. I don't know how it's going to do overall, considering that that one movie that's coming out this Thursday and Friday. It's slipping my mind, but I wonder if it's gonna really take a hit because of that one movie later on in the week. But
I think it will.
Wish it not. Yeah.
I think it will, but not in the long term. Like, the first Jumanji had legs like crazy.
I remember it kept going, and that was something that, at least for me, I was delighted. It seemed like the actors had fun. Did you find that same thing here? Where I think an audience member, it's always cool to see when the actors are like all in and invested. I think you can always tell, and I got that particular feeling in the first one. Does that continue in this film?
Absolutely. These actors are definitely having a lot of fun in the movie. The Rock, especially, Kevin Hart, especially, primarily because they're playing new roles, kind of. As is Jack Black. He is not Bethany this time around. I'll just say that. But he is just as funny as he was in the first one. Everyone just seems to be having the time of their lives. They just seem to be having so much fun. The chemistry is great. It's a good family flick. I think it's a good, as they say in movies, a 4-quadrant film. It'll hit the main demographics for everybody.
Okay, well, that's good news. But actually, you just mentioned something. Do all of the teenagers from the first film actually come back and reprise their roles at all? Like, is that a thing in this film?
They come back, but they may not be in the same position that we remember them. They may not be in the same characters in the game itself.
Gotcha.
But I will say...
But they're in the movie.
Yes, they're in the movie. One of my favorite things about this movie, actually, is a lot of times in sequels, after a character's undergone a journey, they kind of undercut it for the sequel of just like, well, they're back to square one and they haven't changed as people. That's not the case. Of the things that happened to the characters in the first one, they've kind of grown and evolved as people through the events of the first one, and that continues on into this one of they're not starting from scratch. They're different people than they were at the beginning of the first movie, and I really appreciate that sense of continuity.
Okay. Well, I'm glad. And if it wasn't for this, I probably wouldn't have gone to see it. But I may take a night to myself and go see it then, or try to get my father to go with me. He could always use a good time and laugh at the theaters. In fact, we just got a gift card, so I think you've just sold me on it.
Good. Yeah. I really enjoyed it. Now we've got that movie coming out this week, and then 1917. I'm very excited for that.
Now, does that? I know that it comes out in January in the UK. Is it really a nationwide release on Christmas Day?
Either Christmas Day or the 27th.
27th. Okay.
Now that one, Heather and I both are excited for 1917.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very much so. I'm gonna try to get some guys together to go see that up here in Michigan. So, excellent news. I thank you so much for that quick review. I'm glad you both had a good time.
Oh, absolutely. You ready to get into some news?
I am ready, sir. In fact, I had the first thing already pulled up here. I've been thinking about it for a little bit today.
Yeah, I have mixed thoughts on this. So we're going to start off with our one and only trailer this week, as opposed to last week when we had all the trailers ever made. So Tom Cruise is kind of having a resurgence lately with the past couple Mission Impossibles doing quite well. I've kind of had a new appreciation for him in these last couple Mission Impossibles, just really enjoying them.
Oh, yes.
I don't really know what to make of his next one, Top Gun Maverick. I will preface this by saying I've never seen the original Top Gun, nor do I have any form of attachment to it or sense of caring. I kind of went through a journey with this trailer. The first time I watched it, I was just like, I felt nothing. I was just like, even as someone that hasn't seen the movie, this seems like a lot of just shots that are very, very similar to the first one of him riding the motorcycle with the plane, the girlfriend sitting in the back of the motorcycle, and more or less the exact same style. Then I watched it again later, right before we recorded for this, just so it was fresh in my mind, and I kind of was just like, there's some beautiful shots here, and the story seems at least interesting enough. However, I will say, and we'll talk about it in a little bit here, the trailers aren't really leading us in the direction that I've heard the story is going, so the trailers are a bit deceptive. But I will say, the trailer makes me want to see this movie in IMAX. Like, if I can't see this in IMAX, I don't know if I will see it, because some of the shots look gorgeous. And also, I must have been misled, because I could have sworn that this movie was directed by somebody else, and finding out it's not that person kind of makes me a little less excited, I'm not going to lie. I thought that this movie was being directed by Christopher McQuarrie, and that had me super excited, and it's not. It's somebody I don't really know, so that kind of hurts the excitement a little bit for me. Michael, what did you think about this Top Gun Maverick trailer?
Well, I'm going to do for you what you just did for me. Since you haven't seen Top Gun, you really ought to see it. It is something that is going to be worth your time. I think if you watch that and then go particularly back and watch the announcement trailer that came out in July, which has been my favorite cinematic trailer or snippet all year until that Kylo Ren meets Palpatine Star Wars trailer that was released a few days ago.
That trailer.
Yeah, unreal. But
they
if
should
you
have
haven't
opened
seen
with
Top
that.
Gun, yes, I agree with you. But anyone who hasn't seen Top Gun, who's listening to it, and then you've seen this and you're kind of, I get it. I think you need to see Top Gun. It's a great movie. It ages pretty well, actually. But that announcement trailer and this trailer play on a lot of that nostalgia. Some people are complaining that it's a remake. Well, it's like we're 40 years, 30 years removed from the first one. I understand what people are saying, but this movie looks incredible, and if I could somehow second, third, and fourth that motion of wanting to see this in IMAX, some of these shots, Joseph Kosinski's the director here. Say what you want about Tron Legacy and Oblivion, but they were beautifully shot, and the technology used to capture the shots. He does a lot of stuff in camera. I'm not the most technical critic of cinematography, but everything looks real. It doesn't look like it's been touched up a lot. It looks like they try to capture all the stuff, all of the action in camera without a lot of post-editing effects. That's just my opinion. I could be totally wrong on the action itself. So I cannot wait. This trailer gave me chills once again. I don't think it's as good as the announcement trailer, because you're right, they did reuse a lot of the shots, but with it opening up with the shot of the Tomcat, 14 Tomcat, like that is something that if you don't have a connection to the first one or have any sort of aviation knowledge at all, it's just going to be like, okay, it's a fighter jet. I get it. But this trailer plays on more of the subtlety. I think they're going to hide some of the story. And I think there's a lot of stuff that's going to be predictable. But they've got me in the theater now. If I could prepay my tickets right now, I would do it.
I joked with Heather when I showed her the trailer, and she actually really liked it. I think she liked it more than I did. And she's the one that's kind of coaxing me off, oh, this could actually be interesting. We both kind of joked when we were watching the trailer of, we get it, Tom. You're flying a fighter jet. We get it.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why this movie has been delayed for so long, is he kept insisting of learning how to fly a jet himself. I'm like, we get it, Tom.
The fact that he is going to be 60 by the time the next Mission Impossible movie comes out doesn't even seem possible. It makes me sad, but also basically that 60 is the new 40 for Tom Cruise, because he's drinking from the fountain of youth.
So is Keanu Reeves.
It's unreal. It is unreal, and I'm telling you, you've said something. He has had a resurgence here. Tom Cruise had, and I just rewatched Mission Impossible Fallout here. I think it's on Prime Video, or it's on Netflix or something, and I just wanted to go back and watch it. And that movie has so much heart to it. It's not just a stupid fun action movie. There's actual character moments, and a lot of that is Tom Cruise actually, leaning into that Ethan Hunt role, and the script, Christopher McQuarrie. Absolutely, I get it. And so I'm a huge fan of Tom Cruise. They got my money. Excellent job. I will say the next trailer that comes out for this does need to be more story focused. I couldn't agree more with you.
Yeah, I won't say what the story is here. Like you said, I hope the next trailer delves into that, but the next trailer really needs to show what the story is, because I kind of know what the story is based on some early plot synopsis that they've officially announced. I don't think they were leaks. But yeah, it's you don't get a clear picture of what the story is. This is more like a touch you into nostalgia type, like a Chewie We're Home type trailer for Top Gun fans. And if you're a Top Gun fan, I'm sure that hits the spot. But for me, I'm just like, I need a little bit more detail. That being said, I appreciate the cinematography and everything else. Like, the shots look gorgeous. So it did the job of a trailer, and it bumped the needle up a little bit in terms of excitement for me. Of okay, I'll probably give this one a shot when it comes out in June. Now,
good. I'm glad.
Another piece of news that I can't say I'm surprised about, but it is a little disheartening all the same, is the Power Rangers. We've talked a couple times, especially over the past few weeks, about 2017's Power Rangers and how it is criminally underrated because it flopped, but it really overachieved in all aspects of what we were expecting from a Power Rangers movie. And unfortunately, we're getting confirmation that era of Power Rangers is officially dead, as we are now moving forward with a new Power Rangers movie, but it is sadly a reboot. So we'll be getting a brand new cast, which Dacre Montgomery, the Red Ranger in that movie, and Stranger Things is Billy in season 3, 2, and 3, more or less kind of confirmed that this a while back, but now we have official confirmation from the studio that they're rebooting Power Rangers, which makes me sad. But there's at least a silver lining in my eyes here. So they've said that this new story that they're going to be going is going to be something akin to Back to the Future, in which case these new groups of teenagers will be going back to the 90s, which my brain immediately goes, I'm not even a Power Rangers fan, but if you tell me that whoever these new Power Rangers kids will be, go back in time to the original generation of Power Rangers, and those original guys have to get them back to the present timeline, that's at least intriguing enough of a prospect for me that I'm interested. Michael, what is your experience with Power Rangers, and are you sad to hear that we're not getting more of that 2017 version?
No, not from a financial standpoint. It just makes the most business sense. However, we have said it had a lot more heart. They marketed it towards the kind of the YA audience, and they got me because of that. And even though it wasn't good, it was so much better in my opinion than what I thought it had any business being. And I actually wished that it had been a financial success so that we could get a proper sequel, but it's not going to. I grew up with Power Rangers because of the influence of my cousins. My cousins were more into that. Anything that was coming out of Asia as far as what was popular in the media form, my cousins were always into. I was never into that type of stuff. But first time watching Power Rangers, I was mildly entertained, and I watched a few of the shows, but that basically left very quickly, and I didn't even expect myself to go see the 2017 iteration of Power Rangers. It was just one of those things, like I got nothing else to do, it looks interesting. But because of where they're trying to go here, I really have no interest in revisiting the 90s, especially when it comes to Power Rangers.
At least it's not the 80s.
So it's a very good point. However, I'm not feeling gripped. I feel more sad, honestly, because of the fact that they're not going to continue this, because I think they had a good cast. I think they had something brewing there. Now, it doesn't mean that this next iteration can be good. I'm not saying that whatsoever. However, I am just not interested. But, you show me a trailer, see what you're going for, and I'll keep my mind open.
Yeah, when it comes to these Power Rangers movies, we've been wrong before to doubt. So, who knows? Like I said, at least it's not the 80s, because literally everyone seems to be going to the 80s these days. Stranger Things, Wonder Woman. At least it's in the 90s, not the 80s, but it does sadden me to hear that we're not continuing in that main Power Rangers timeline that we established in 2017. And yeah, that's sad, but hardly surprising to say the least. What is surprising, though, is hearing that Dave Batista, who is quietly building himself quite a resume as an actor, apparently has had some meetings with Warner Brothers. So this has led some people to speculate that he may be in Matt Reeves' upcoming Batman movie, since we're getting casting announcements for that left and right. Michael, do you think Batista has had conversations about a DC-specific role? Is it Batman, or is it some other project, because Warner Brothers does projects all the time?
Well, that's everything's based on rumors. I would say what the most probable would be I would say it's going to be Batman, something tied to Batman. I think the best way you can do that is kind of revive that character and reintroduce them to the mainstream audience when we've had so many iterations in this last decade. I think is to bring in a heavy-hitting person to play the antagonist, somebody who has a little bit of name recognition, which you've just said his stock is definitely on the rise in Hollywood. If it's not, I guess what the rumors are, Bane, because, for one, he has the physical presence to play that part, so that's an easy casting choice there. I just don't know who else he'd play. Why else would you go after him? You're not getting him to put him in a Slim Fast commercial. You're going to get him to play a more hulking type of presence on film. At least that would be my objective analysis. So I will say I have no issue. If anyone, I don't know if anyone out there on Reddit or any sort of forums are upset about some of these actors crossing over into a different comic series. Like, I honestly don't care. I want the best person for the job. And I think it also just adds a little bit of more credibility to the genre if people are willing to cross these lines, because it's worth it for them to do it. So I mean, who's to say at this point, since they're all rumors, but I hope it's for Batman, because as much as I liked Bane in The Dark Knight Rises, I thought it was a missed opportunity because of just how the whole second half of that movie ends. So
yeah, I want it to be Bane, but I don't think it is. I think, looking on paper, not only from a physicality standpoint, but from an acting perspective, I think Batista is a great choice to be Bane, because Bane is a lot of different things. Yes, he's that gigantic hulking monster when he's on the Venom, but also he's a brilliant tactician. The reason why he broke Batman's back in the Nightfall story arc is because he wore Batman down over time, over months, slowly chipping away at his strength and at his mind. So he's a brilliant tactician. And Batista has shown that he's got range as an actor. He can be the more methodical. He doesn't have to be the brute character. He can have some intelligence to him, like his role in Blade Runner 2049. That's a completely different character than Drax or Spectre, which he was the best thing about Spectre, even though he only says one word. I don't know if it's Batman, as much as I would like it to be. If it wasn't already filming, I would say the Suicide Squad, because it's James Gunn, and he is so tight with James Gunn, and more or less is willing to put his career on the line to defend him when Disney fired James Gunn. I think it is something DC related. I think after Guardians 3, he's going to be out of Marvel, but I don't necessarily know what that would be yet. In a perfect world, at least to me, I think Batista is a better fit for Black Adam than The Rock, but that's a whole other argument for another day. I think he is somewhere in the mix for DC property, but Bane seems too good to be true. He doesn't seem like the type of casting choice that we've been getting for this Matt Reeves Batman movie so far. We seem to be getting a lot of, like, not to say he isn't talented, but like uber talented indie actors before we go with the sexy picks, if that makes sense.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, so if you had to put money on it, I mean, you had pretty good instincts. You're more connected in this industry as far as your ear to the ground, and you have a lot of credibility, I think, and I think that's evidenced by the fact that your JJ theory in Superman's going to come true. But where are you putting your chips, just to be definitive?
Also, the thing I was patting myself on the back about, I predicted that Spider-Man deal when he went to the MCU before it happened, and also the spoiler alert, J.K. Simmons thing 3 weeks before Spider-Man came out.
Yes.
I don't see Bane, but maybe like a Solomon Grundy type character.
Okay.
He could fit into a couple different movies.
I know who that is, actually.
Yay! But yeah, I think it'll be something DC related. I just don't think it'll be Batman. As cool as it would be to have him as Bane, which also would make a lot of sense because Bane is not a Caucasian character and Dave is not a Caucasian actor. So I think it'd be cool to have more diversity, more like line up with the nationality, because that's also something we really haven't gotten right with Bane either, because that's one of those characters that normally I say race doesn't matter, but for me, I've always kind of wanted Bane to be the right nationality because it is kind of part of who he is, growing up in Mexican prison. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say that. I mean, given that information, you're almost convincing me to even go, or at least hope for a different direction. Then, I mean, do you think Bane is the villain they would introduce in this next Batman film, whenever that comes out between now and like 2023? Do you think that who's most likely to be the antagonist of that film?
No, I think this
Okay.
next Batman has a lot of Batman villains that we have already seen in other movies as ancillary, secondary background characters like Catwoman, Riddler, Penguin, Two-Face. I think they'll all be there as background characters for a larger villain that we haven't seen yet or seen done right. Maybe like a Riddler is toying with everyone, because what we've heard so far with this Batman movie is it's like a film noir, which, hallelujah, that's what I've been asking for a Batman movie for years, to show off he is truly the world's greatest detective. Maybe like a Riddler or a Calendar Man who kind of, if you do them like the Arkham games, can be very similar to a Hannibal Lecter type of character of maybe Batman has to rely on a killer like Calendar Man or Riddler to find a worse killer. It may be a stretch, but I would
Interesting.
love to see Professor Pig as in a live action movie. As dumb as that name sounds, he's more or less this surgeon slash butcher that any human imperfection he feels like he has to correct and make them more or less into his mindless zombies slash his quote unquote dolls. He's a really creepy character that I feel like could be perfect for a live action movie, but he's one of those like lesser known characters.
Yeah, and obviously surprised I've never heard of him. Do you think you could pull off that type of creepiness and vibe in a PG-13 film?
Oh yeah, you can get away with a lot in PG-13 nowadays.
That's true. Very true.
Cast Rami Malek, his eyes are creepy enough.
Yes, that's a very good point. Can't wait for that movie too.
Yes, that looks great. Thankfully, this is not the only DC news that we have. Apparently, they just decided to announce a whole bunch of stuff, and unlike previous DC announcements, I actually believe that these things will come to fruition. Well, at least one of these I think will. They announced Shazam 2 will be coming April 1st, 2022. What's interesting to note about this is only like 4 or 5 months after Black Adam comes out. So this more or less confirms to me that they're going to be connected somehow. I don't think Black Adam will show up as the main antagonist in Shazam 2, but I think at least they'll sow the seeds for Shazam 3 when it'll be Shazam versus Black Adam. Michael, what did you think of the first Shazam, and are you excited to hear about a second one?
I am very glad to hear about the second one. I thought the first one was so much better than what I was thinking it was, and again, thinking it would be. Let me use proper grammar, excuse me. But a lot of that was due to you. You're the one who pushed me again to see that and see that right away. You told me it'd be a great family movie, so we watched it as a family. My parents had a blast. I actually think they enjoyed it more than I did. They were engaged from the very first scene. And the one thing I didn't like is I thought they reused the same shot of a hero gets knocked down, he slowly gets back up, faces camera, out like wide shot, and then it's a shot on the villain walking back. Like they used that shot 6 or 7 times in the last act of the movie. It just got kind of old. But all in all, I thought this was amazing. I did not see the fact that all of the foster siblings getting powers at the end. Like that was awesome. So I don't know what they're gonna do in the sequel, but I thought the family dynamic was such a powerful message. Favorite part of the movie is the foster mom's bumper sticker. Being a foster mom's my superhero power, I think is what it said. That's awesome. I think that's so cool. So the announcement of a sequel, I'm 100% on board. I'm just thinking, why is it taking them 4 years to do it? Like, it's not like too little too late, but the movie didn't make box office bonkers type of money. So I don't know why it's so late. Like, why isn't this coming out in 2022? And why are they pushing it back?
It is coming out in 2022.
I thought it was 2023.
Nope, 2022. And also, Shazam was earlier this year, so they are pulling the trigger on this pretty fast.
Okay, my apologies. I read all of that wrong.
Because think about it. If it starts going into production a month or two, then that's less than 2 years.
Well,
Because 2020 is right
except for
around the
April
corner, man.
that is true. I don't want to think about the 90s being 20 years ago.
No,
My apologies.
the 90s will be 30 years away.
Well, yes, I mean, but the last thing of the 90s, 1999, I'm just saying for the record, but I apologize for not being prepared. I read
It's
that
all right.
wrong.
Josh is my
and
normal
it's
co-host.
clear-
We're used to it.
that's funny. I won't tell him you said that.
No, he knows. He knows. He's very ill-prepared
okay.
sometimes.
Well, even so, it feels like that's such a long wait. I know that that's kind of standard between sequels, 3 years, 2 to 3 years, even if it gets fast-tracked. The reason why I'm a little sad is because, like, I don't know. It's sad because they have to wait that long, but I feel like if they really wanted to do that, they could put it out, like, in the fall of 2021. I feel if they really tried.
Their
But I
palette
guess-
for 2021 is already stacked enough as is. You've got The Batman, The Suicide Squad, Black Adam, all within 6 months of each other.
Well, DC, in Marvel, what was that? Was it 2014 that Marvel had 4 films in 1 year? That felt like an achievement in film. I didn't feel.
No, that was only
very-
2 that year. That was Captain America and Guardians of the Galaxy. I think maybe it was 2017. Thor Ragnarok, Spider-Man,
Guardians 2.
Guardians 2, and there was something else because I remember 2017 being a great year for superhero movies. But I think it's funny that we're still getting this before Aquaman 2 because that's December 2022, and Aquaman came out last year. And Shazam came out earlier this year, which seems like eons ago.
It does. Oh my goodness, this year. We're only 2 weeks away from the end of this year, but there's some things that feel like yesterday and some things that just feel like they were, like you said, forever ago. For some reason, even though I just watched Shazam, I felt like I watched Aquaman before. For some reason. Oh, goodness. They were good, though. I'm glad they are setting this up, and with the success of what the trailer for Wonder Woman 1984 looks like, I'm glad that DC is finding a consistent theme. It's the theme that I think they've taken a while to nail down. If only they could do it with Superman.
Yeah, well, I think that's a leadership thing of Walter Hamada took over a few years back and has tried to steer the ship in the right direction ever since. Also, probably firing Zack Snyder may have been the catalyst for change in the right direction. But you can't say that online or else you get roasted alive. How dare you slander the name of Snyder, even though he was always kind of a mediocre storyteller to begin with. Great visually, but storytelling-wise, never the strongest. But what do I know? I would like to see for the next one, what's his name? The green caterpillar that talks. They clearly were setting him up. I used to know at one point. In the comics, he's got like his own Legion of Doom type group that he has that's most specifically villains of the Shazam family. So now that we have a Shazam family, you need a group to go up against them. I think that's the direction they're going as kind of like the holdover until we get Shazam versus Black Adam. And it'll be like Kong versus Godzilla of Shazam and Black Adam fight for a little bit and then have to team up to take down a greater evil, which I still think is a big idiotic move because Black Adam has always been and will always be a villain, not an anti-hero, but I've beat that dead horse enough. Now, for a release date that I still don't think for the life of me we will meet because it has been moved so many times already.
Oh, my.
The Flash. Oh, my goodness. This movie was supposed to come out last year. Not start production, supposed to be released last year. So this movie has got officially, on the record, has gone through 4 separate directors. We're now on our 4th director for this. You had the guy that directed the most recent episode of The Mandalorian, Rick Fu something. He was supposed to direct it at one point, then he left. The guys that did Game Night were supposed to do it, and then they left. I believe Lord and Miller were attached to this movie at one point. There were discussions about bringing Robert Zemeckis in at one point. Now Andy Muschietti, the director of the first 2 It movies and Mama, which I noticed this a couple days ago. Is it just me, or does DC love hiring horror directors for the DC universe? Of Zack Snyder, Dawn of the Dead, David F. Sandberg did Shazam, but he also did Annabelle Creation and Lights Out. James Wan did Aquaman, but also did The Conjuring, Insidious, Saw. And now you have David F. Then you have Andy Muschietti doing The Flash, who did It. And Mama.
I mean, is that too much for it to be a coincidence?
I think not. But so he's directed to it now. So if you've had this many actors go through the project, and you've had this many directors going attached to it and then dropping out, but you've still had one actor attached to it, maybe that's the red flag. So Ezra Miller supposedly is still attached to be the Flash. I'm going to say this now. That's bull. He is absolutely not the Flash anymore. I think they have an idea that they want to get into Flash, that they're just not putting it on the record yet, because he's definitely what's holding up this project. And there's been some very troubling reports from this production, also from his perspective as well, about didn't agree with the vision of the director, so he decided to write his own script, which that is not an actor's place to be like, I don't like the direction the story's taking, I'm going to write my own story with this comic book artist. That's not a professional thing to do at all. So those directors obviously left. I don't think this is a controversial opinion to say. I did not care for Ezra Miller's Flash in Justice League. And as this is coming from someone that actually defends Justice League, and I actually quite enjoy Justice League. It's not the best movie in the world, but I like it enough. I do not like his Barry Allen. I don't get what he was going for at all. So I wouldn't mind seeing him recast, but also I think he is getting recast. So I don't know why we're sticking with this. And they're just like, well, yeah, we're going to be filming after he's done with his commitments on Fantastic Beasts 3, which is supposed to come out early 2022 or late 2021. So you sure about that? Because that seems like you're cutting it a little close. I think they're planning on getting somebody new. Michael, what are your thoughts about the Flash movie as a whole and Ezra Miller as the Flash?
I didn't actually mind him in Justice League. I thought the scenes he was in was actually pretty decent. I haven't seen him enough, honestly, to have a full round opinion on it, but I don't mind either way. It's not something I feel strongly on. A Flash movie, on the other hand, is not something I'm really interested in. The TV show, I've never been interested in watching because I just don't. I think it's a hard concept because of how you have to shoot it. You either have to shoot it where you just do a bunch of jump cuts and he's doing things so the audience has no idea what's happening, or you can spend a lot of money in After Effects and adding a lot of CGI in, and everything else is slow motion and quote unquote slow motion. So I think it's just hard to shoot and capture. I also just don't think he's that interesting of a superhero. I thought he was more entertaining in the mid 2000s Justice League animated TV show, honestly. And even then he got made fun of a lot.
Which, actually, you bring up a very, very good point with that Justice League animated series. So there's a big difference between the Justice League animated series and the live-action Justice League. Well, one is good, but the big difference is in the live-action movie that we got with Ezra Miller and the TV show with Grant Gustin. Both of those Flashes are Barry Allen. In the Justice League animated series, it's Wally West. Now, I can absolutely see them keeping Ezra Miller somehow in this universe to be like, well, he's out there somewhere, but this Flash movie is Wally West's movie instead of Barry Allen. Because there's a lot of people that know that incarnation of the Flash that may not know the Barry Allen one, but they grew up with the Justice League animated series, so they're more familiar with Wally. The nice thing is with the Flash, it's like a Green Lantern. There's been multiple people with that title that you can slot in. You don't necessarily have to go with a Hal Jordan. You can go with a Jon Stewart or someone else. Here, you don't necessarily have to go with a Barry Allen. For many decades in the comics, it was Wally West after Barry disappeared in Crisis on Infinite Earths. I think you can stick with a Wally. That way you don't have to necessarily recast your Barry Allen, but you can still get a Flash movie, and there's different stories to be told with a Wally. I think Ezra Miller's out as Flash. I've thought this for a while. I do still think, though, that Andy Muschietti is staying on as director for the time being until he has creative differences with Ezra Miller and then leaves. I think he's attached. I think Warner Brothers is really high on Andy Muschietti, as they should be. Chapter 2 wasn't nearly as good as the first one, but it still made them a lot of money. So I am interested in the Flash. I like the character of the Flash. I like Barry more than Wally, but I think there's a lot of untapped potential there, as I think a lot of DC has a lot of untapped potential, but I won't bark up that tree today. I want this Flash movie to succeed, but it's one of those properties that it's just been the thing that will never actually happen because it's been in development for so long. And some people that are more optimistic will be like, well, Shazam was in development forever and that eventually got made. That's true. But Shazam didn't have nearly as many production issues as his Flash movies had. So Flash is like the Batman, which also had a lot of issues. I'll believe that we're getting this movie when I see it. Like, once the cameras actually start rolling, then I'll believe that we have the Flash. But until then, I believe nothing concrete from Warner Brothers in regards to a Flash movie. Now, for our last one today, we have another release date, but one that raises all the red flags in the world to me. Mortal Kombat, the beloved video game franchise, is getting a movie reboot because apparently the 1990 version just isn't good enough anymore. It's not great, but it's at least enjoyable. So we're getting a reboot of that, and they've just pushed it back, and this raises all the red flags in the world to me. Like I said, it got pushed back from sometime in 2020 to January 2021. Well, let's all take our hats off and remember in memoriam of this movie, because let's be honest, January is where movies go to die. This raises all the red flags in the world to me. Michael, am I overreacting here, or do you think that's about right?
Well, all you have to do is say video game live action movie, and we can end scene cut and just move on from there.
I still defend Jake Gyllenhaal's Prince of Persia movie.
But it's not like this life-changing cinematic event that defined a new genre. Okay, it's not Iron Man from 2008. It's not something that's going to kick off this wild and crazy spur of like, all right, let's make. I mean, we're gonna see maybe with the success or lack thereof of the Witcher series, if that'll actually find a happy medium for some video game genre. I mean, now obviously that's source material through the books as well. I get that, but you know, most people know The Witcher, I would believe, through the games. This Mortal Kombat, obviously, it's the games. Is it going to be something that is worth seeing for me? No. January, obviously, when the studio doesn't really get behind and back that, man, from the very beginning, if you're going to put it in January, you know they don't have confidence, especially pushing it back. I mean, technically, that's basically a year from now. Listen, you're not wrong. I don't blame you whatsoever to have apprehension now. And I will until I see the first trailer, until the movie comes out. This is going to have to be one that's going to have to, basically, you're going to have to prove to me why I should go see it. You're going to have to really convince me. Or other films, you had, it's like, it's really Jerry Maguire. You had me at Hello. We talked about it with Top Gun Maverick. You had me at Hello there. This one, you're going to really have to twist my arm. And so I'm going to start out skeptical. I do not have an open mind about this because I don't know the source material here. I've never played any of the games. So I'm not interested to begin with. And then hearing this news and your skepticism, I mean, it's just, this movie has to do a lot to get me to the theater.
To amend my statement from earlier, actually, I want to correct myself. A movie coming out in January may not spell the end. It's not a very good sign for a big budget movie. A lot of smaller movies can find some pretty good success in January depending on the movie. Case in point, The Visit, M. Night Shyamalan's The Visit, which was surprisingly good, came out in January. We had no expectations for it, and that ended up being good. But typically, big franchise potential movies or something that has an famous IP attached to it being in January, that's a big red flag to me. And Mortal Kombat, even if you don't play the games or you haven't seen the original movie, you know the name. It's iconic. It's super well known. So even casual people that have never really played it, they're going to at least be intrigued by it. And having come out in January, I think is a really bad sign for the future of this movie. But also, if I remember correctly, this is a first-time director with a lot of actors that we've never heard of, which also raises a lot of red flags. I'm having some Uwe Boll flashbacks here, and that's never a good thing.
No, that's a good reference.
Yeah, for those that don't know Uwe Boll, you are incredibly lucky. This is the man that is responsible for most of the bad video game movies we've ever had.
I will say, though, if anyone out there listening, any of you future famous directors, if any of you wants to make a Mass Effect movie, please go ahead and do it. I
Maybe
would
stick
go back
the landing
and
this time.
all of that. Yeah. Well, they could do it well. It would definitely have to be a blockbuster type of cinematic experience, but I'm just saying, I'm begging somebody to make that, because I think that is a rich environment. You could basically take all the really, really sore Star Wars fans and the really, really, really disrespected Star Trek fans, introduce some sci-fi and some fantasy, unite both of those hurting fan bases into one new thing, and then you can really, really tick them off when you don't stick the landing again. So, I mean, that's just what we do with our favorite sci-fi fan bases.
I'll leave you guys with this. A question for Michael, and then we'll go into our main discussion. If we ever did get an adaptation of Mass Effect in a different medium, would you rather it be a film series or a television series like a Netflix?
That's a fantastic question. Because of what it is, and now I will say, I said this before watching a little bit of, what's the show on Prime Video right now? It's a big sci-fi show.
Lost in Space?
No, it's
The
a
Expanse.
little more mature thing. Thank you. That show looks pretty good. Before seeing that, I'd be like, no, I want it to have a movie style budget because I want it to look really good. Well, The Expanse is an example of how good a show could look. That doesn't have like the backing of like Lucasfilm and Disney, for example, like The Mandalorian. So I still think you can make, like, out of the video game trilogy, you could make like 7 really high quality story films. You really could. However, the story and how it's told and how you get to know the characters, which Mass Effect is completely character driven. People love characters in RPGs. How you flesh them out is better on the small screen. So I would say, like, Jeff Bezos, you got billions of dollars
that he's spending on Lord of the Rings.
Yes. Along with Lord of the Rings, which will be successful, get a decent director, showrunner, and invest that same amount of money into a Mass Effect series, and I will watch it.
How would you feel if you heard Mass Effect, the Amazon series, directed by Peter Jackson?
We'd have to have an emergency podcast, is what I'd have to say there, Nathan. I'd have to call you.
So basically,
and I'd have to ask your permission.
So basically, it'd be like if we got confirmation tomorrow that JJ is directing a Superman movie, of just like rejoicing in the streets, and you'd hear my screams from Florida.
I would say whatever the opposite of the disturbance in the force I would probably have to calm you down. Absolutely.
You just hear Obi-Wan go, and I heard millions of voices silently cry out in excitement.
Yes, exactly. Just flip it on its head.
All right, well, that'll about do it for news. This week's episode is sponsored by Funko Pop Figures. Don't have the best Christmas budget? Get some Funko Pops for the person in your life, because they're just fun little figurines that I need to stop collecting because I now have way too many in my possession. Thanks, Cody Manning, for getting me started, and now I can't stop.
Wait, Cody, like your junior year roommate?
Yep.
Cody Manning?
He got something in college. I forget what he got first, and I got like a Batman Beyond or a Nightwing. I was just like, all right, cool. I could stop with these. These aren't that cute. These aren't that cool.
Oh, no.
And yeah, I have way too many now and not enough at the same time.
Well, does your wife concur with that?
She'll agree with both of those, that we have too many and not enough.
Oh, okay. Oh, I love it. That's great. What is now? I question: does she collect her own?
Yes.
For the sake of the sponsor. Okay, she does. So
we more or
wife's
less
on
have our
board, too.
own rules to it. It has to be something you have some form of an emotional connection to or enjoy. It can't just be like a random pop figure. And to make it more fun, because we're collectors, that's why we have physical media and discs and books. Since we're physical collectors, we actually have to find them physically in the store. We've only ever bought Pops online like twice, and I think one of them was Force Awakens related. So yeah, that just kind of makes it more fun to try and find them in person, because there's certain ones that are only available in certain stores, yada yada yada. It makes it a little bit more fun to try and seek things out.
Sure. Well, good. I'm glad. It's always nice to have something to collect, and they're not incredibly expensive. Now, if you have like 1,000 of them, of course, then that might be an expensive hobby over time. But it's not like golfing. It's a cheaper hobby than golfing or shooting guns or stuff like that.
Indeed. You ready to talk sequel trilogy?
Yes. Speaking of shooting guns, how about shooting up the holes in the plots of the? Wait a minute.
You're getting a little ahead of yourself.
Is this supposed to be a good review or is this supposed to be a bad review or a good review?
Oh my god. You're jumping the gun a little bit, but we gotta rewind the clock a little bit to 2012.
Okay. Yes.
I remember when this happened, of the biggest news story of the decade by far. Disney acquires the rights to Lucasfilm for $4 billion and has plans to make more Star Wars movies. I remember, like, my life stopped in that moment. I was in my dorm at the time, and my life just stopped, going, Disney just bought Star Wars. Oh, and Indiana Jones, but whatever. But Star Wars. And it's just like, we're getting more Star Wars movies. We're getting more Star Wars movies. And I remember just like running down the hall, talking to everyone that had their door open. We're getting more Star Wars movies. Disney just bought Star Wars. We're getting more Star Wars movies. And there are some people that are like, what? I don't believe you. Look it up, man. Like I was a crazed madman when that news happened, because it seems so unbelievable. And I remember you and I having many discussions about it. Picking up straight from when Disney acquired the rights, what are the earliest memories you have about when Disney first bought Lucasfilm and the hubbub surrounding it?
Yeah, so I remember where I was at. I was outside Chapman, our freshman dorm on the campus of the Olivet Nazarene University. Thank you very much. And I was actually walking to the cafeteria. It was a late night after band practice, and I was tired, and my friend Stefan, who and he called me, which was unusual, at least at the time. We usually at that point had a time each week where we just caught up with one another. We set it aside. So for him to just call me and not like message me first, that was unusual. So I picked up, and he told me, all he just said was, they're making new movies, and he was so excited he didn't give me any context. And I was like, congratulations.
Yes, we get a new movie every week.
Yeah, wow. That's the papers are gonna fly off the shelves tomorrow with that headline. But he told me, he said, no, that Lucasfilm, has bought Disney. They're gonna make new films, and I remember stopping. I remember where I was Disney? At. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, excuse me. For anyone else listening carefully, not laughing at themselves, Disney had bought Lucasfilm, and yes, you're correct. They were gonna make new films, and it took a second for me to process it, and then that is, I said, how is this possible? We talked a little bit, and then we let each other go, and then I walked up, and the first person I talked to about it was you. We had a discussion. We didn't really know each other that well at that time, but I I heard you discussing it in the hallway, and that's what we debriefed about it. But I just remember it was like this moment of what are they going to cover? But it was broke that they're bringing back some of the original cast, and obviously with all those details, it had been in the works for a while. We deduced that right away. And so it was just kind of this idea of like just building expectation. Like I can't believe they were going to do it, considering the impact it had on me as a kid, my imagination, the toys, the video games. I mean, everything. It basically shaped how I interacted with other people because of like all of the fun and the play times when I was a toddler, all the way up through a lot of the games that I grew up with. It formulated a lot of my social interaction, and all of that just came flooding back in this wave of nostalgia. So I was over the moon about it, but I did not, at that moment in 2012, I did not set any expectations because I just really didn't know what to think. I really wanted to wait for more details to come out.
Yeah, I remember just being super ecstatic that we were getting more. So then flash forward a couple months, and they've started filming. Well, before they even started filming, I remember the now iconic picture that really just made it real to me. It was right before I went into a video editing class with Dr. Addig, now McLaughlin. She was teaching a class, and we were all just sitting around in the editing lab waiting for class to start. And I remember Star Wars / Lucasfilm / Disney shared the first quote-unquote official picture from Episode 7. Didn't even have a title yet. And it was everyone sitting around in a circle doing a table read. And I was just like, oh, man, this is cool. Of black and white picture of like the original cast with these new people. And it said this whole cast list of people that are in it. Of cool, Mark Hamill's back, Harrison Ford's back, Carrie Fisher's back. Who's Daisy Ridley? Adam Driver? I remember all the articles going, girls, Adam Driver, because he at the time was like the most well-known of all these kind of unknown actors. But even then, most people didn't know who Adam Driver was. John Boyega?
Yeah, exactly.
Oscar Isaac was in some movie called Inside Llewyn Davis. That was his claim to fame, working with the Coen brothers. My heart was just so happy to see Peter Mayhew was returning as Chewbacca one last time. That was so great to see. But it was just, my heart swelled with emotion just seeing we're getting more Star Wars. And it's this perfect blend of new and old. You saw these new actors sitting side by side with the classics, and it just seemed like it was going to be a great time. So then, I'm trying to think of the timeline. We'll talk about trailers in just a second, but I got one more anecdote. I remember in college, this was maybe about 2 or 3 months before the movie came out. Something that subsequent releases didn't have the same impact, but this one was something special that I shared with my roommate at the time, Alex. Something called Force Friday. Michael, you remember that?
Oh, absolutely.
So Force Friday was the day that they decided to release for the first time a good chunk of the merchandise for Force Awakens. So when we were done with our classes around like noon or 1 that day, my roommate and I were just like, you ready? You ready? We hit all the major stores in our area, which wasn't many, maybe 3, because our college was a very small town. We hit like Walmart, Target, Books A Million, everything, trying to get within our budget of anything Force Awakens that we could get. I got a massively oversized, definitely doesn't fit me, shirt of Kylo Ren and the First Order Troopers. I got a Kylo Ren mask, Kylo Ren lightsaber. We got some pop figures. That's one of the only times I've ever ordered a pop figure online was when I bought Kylo Ren because we could not find it anywhere. Alex got a Rey pop figure. I remember that really well. I got a Poe Dameron, and it was kind of weird at the time getting pop figures for characters we still had never seen before. So I kept crossing my fingers of just like, oh, when Force Awakens comes out, Poe better be a good character. He better not be some annoying scrub that I'm going to have to live with their pop figure, Rose Tico. Thankfully, I don't actually have a Rose pop figure, but imagine if you got Rose merchandise before Last Jedi came out. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. And I remember going over to my girlfriend's dorm, now my wife's dorm, to be like, look at all the Star Wars toys I bought because I'm in my 20s. And just the level of excitement of Star Wars toys are back. And I'm going to be honest, no movie in the Star Wars saga since Force Awakens had nearly as much or as good of merchandise. Like, where is all the Star Wars toys? That still bothers me to this day. But Force Awakens had so much great merchandise that I just like gobbled everything up. I remember on my Christmas list in 2015, top of my Christmas list, anything Force Awakens related. And yes, sure enough, I got a lot of Star Wars stuff that year. Let's talk about those Force Awakens trailers, because you are involved in one of my strong memories of one of those trailers.
Yes.
That initial teaser trailer at Star Wars Celebration. I remember we both were watching the live stream on separate computers. Like, I think you were in the library or something.
I was in the library. Yes, you're not talking about the initial one, the Black Friday that came out. It was November 28th, 2014.
No, not
it was
that
Black
one.
Friday.
I'm talking about Star Wars Celebration.
No, you're not talking about that one. Okay, the Chewie We're Home trailer.
Man. That touched me in all the nostalgic places.
I was late to a class because of that.
Worth it. Worth it.
I stayed. Stefan we were also messaging back and forth. Stefan's my best friend. He's a huge Star Wars fan as well, in case anyone wants to know. But yeah, we were messaging back and forth as well. And he was actually outside, and it was raining at his college, and he stopped and watched it, and was late to his nursing class because he wanted to watch it so bad. So we all had different priorities that day. And,
That's the only thing that mattered.
Yeah,
the weird thing is, it wasn't just us. I remember talking to almost anybody that day of, hey, there's a Star Wars trailer today, right? Yeah, I do. You ready? Like, there's a lot of people that were waiting for the trailer, and then as soon as it dropped, kind of the whole buzz around campus was, holy crap balls, we're getting more Star Wars, and everyone became a Star Wars fan again. It was this really amazing energy that unfortunately has not been captured since. It was.
You're right, and you are absolutely right, because I remember I'd frequent the library a lot, and people were talking to other people unprompted. It's like, hey, dude, what did you think of the Star Wars trailer? Not asking, did you see it? They were just asking it in such a way like
that you already saw it.
Yeah, everyone saw it. What did you think? And you know what? And that is something you are right. That was such a cool moment to be like at a college environment where everyone talks to everyone about that type of stuff. So seeing that for what it was, looking back, it is a special moment. Really, it truly was.
And I thought it might just be in my bubble because I was a film major at the time before I switched it to something kind of similar. I thought it was just in my same bubble because movies are bubble in the comm department. But no, it was a basically campus-wide excitement for Star Wars of just, oh boy, we cannot wait for this movie. So I think I haven't talked to Michael about this at a time, but I think this week we'll change things up and we'll kind of go in sequential order. So past few weeks we've been going earliest memories of each movie, break those down individually, then general thoughts. Let's do memories, and then we'll go into general thoughts for Force Awakens and do earliest memories of Last Jedi, and then talk about Last Jedi. Kind of go like a series of events. So
okay,
we finally get to Force Awakens. That you and I both saw it Thursday night. What do you remember?
So I was my friend Stefan, again, he was the one who's arranged a lot of this stuff for me. He's the one who pre-purchased. He purchased our tickets, and so we were at an IMAX, the first quote-unquote North American screening for normal people, not anyone who went to the premieres. And so it was a 7 o'clock, and I remember, it was basically I had to wake myself up, because as soon as you saw A Galaxy in a Far, Far Away, all the way until you see BB-8 roll up to spot the landing craft of the First Order, I basically had forgotten that, like, it was surreal. Like, I just had to wake myself up, like, okay, focus, Michael, this is a movie now. And the whole impression of that night was just fantastic. I remember the ending of the film is such a cliffhanger, and you're like, oh my gosh, I gotta wait 2 years or what have you. But I remember there was a guy to my back right. He was in the top row, and I remember what he looks like still. He just yelled, "He did it, everyone! JJ did it!" And everyone this was after the credits were over with, so there was still a lot of people, and everyone just started roaring in applause.
See,
and I'll never forget that.
My theater had someone similar, but did something different. When the movie was done, we were all happy. We clapped loudly, and then some guy in like the second or third row stands up before everyone else and goes, "All right, we all enjoyed it. Now, don't say anything as we leave the theater so the people behind us can enjoy it too. Let's not spoil it for them." I'm just like, that man is a hero. Not everyone wears capes. Like, yes. Let's not talk about this until we get to the car so we don't spoil the amazingness for the people behind us. It's like that's
Absolutely.
A cool thing to say. But I remember the two loud... Well, I always like going to premieres because the crowd reactions are different. I still lost my voice when I saw Endgame this year, but when you get the Star Wars logo and the siren blares, the theater just erupted, and then we can't take that. That's a piece of garbage. The garbage will do. Pan right, Millennium Falcon. People just lose it. And then, of course, the moment that everyone saw in the trailer, Chewie, we're home. And it just, you feel the happy tears flowing. Movie ends. I remember distinctly, whenever any movie's done, I always look to my mom and dad and be like, did we like it? I look over to my mom, they're the original generation. They saw sitting in the aisles, watching the original trilogy. So look over to my mom, who absolutely hates the prequels. My dad can tolerate them at least a little bit. Look over to my mom, who absolutely hates the prequels, and she just goes, "Now that's better. That's Star Wars." And I'm just like, yes it is. That is how you do it. Good job, JJ. And then I look up, and you have already texted me because we were in the same time zone, so we actually more or less saw the same showing at the same time. So you wasted no time texting me, just going, "It's back. That was amazing." I was just like, yes, that was, I saw it so many times. So we were still in college at the time, so Heather was at home in Illinois still. I was so proud of her. She saw it, I think, Saturday morning, all by herself, actually. She didn't see it with anybody else. She was just wanted to see it so bad, and she absolutely loved it. Ironically, she told me this later. She was kicking herself. She found out later that day that her cousin also saw it by himself. She's like, I would have just gone to see it with you, but whatever. Just like a big old missed high five.
No.
She loved it.
Oh, that's funny.
We introduced one of our friends to it in college. Just like, all right, we want to get you into Star Wars. We're going to show you The Force Awakens first because we think that's an easier in for you. And they really, really enjoyed it. We eventually showed them the original trilogy. Don't worry. But yeah, Force Awakens, it was like this shot in the arm of welcome back, Star Wars. I've missed you, my friend. It was the equivalent of a movie hug. A movie just hugging you going, it's okay. I had to leave for a little bit, but now I'm back. And some people were complaining at the time of, it's just a retread of Episode 4. I will always defend Episode 7 being a retread of A New Hope because Disney had to prove that they knew what they were doing with the franchise, which they would subsequently drop the very next movie, but we'll get there in just a little bit. Them repeating Episode 4 to me was the right choice for 7 because it showed, okay, we know what we're doing, at least in this regard. JJ knows what he's doing, at least. Yeah, I think Force Awakens is still my favorite of the Disney-era Star Wars movies. I really enjoyed this one. I saw it numerous times in theaters, and it was exactly what the Star Wars fandom needed, and almost as soon as the movie came out, it was all downhill from there.
Yeah. I mean, I will say The Force Awakens, hype aside, has got to be one of the best remakes of all time. I say that jokingly, but I mean, there are a few things I would change in my own little sort of fan fiction head in my head canon, I would basically, if anyone knows the old EU, what the planet like Raxus Prime was, it's basically an old Junkers planet that basically was about as dark as Geonosis, and a little bit more like stormy. But it was just a junk planet. It was a salvager's dream in the EU, and then I would have had, because there's no reason why Jakku needs to be a desert planet that's like Tatooine, and there's no reason why Jakku can't just be Tatooine. Like, there's literally no reason for it. And then I think there was a missed opportunity for the stormtrooper that Finn fights. Really, that should have been Phasma. And if it was, and then if you have Chewie embrace Leia, I think the movie, in my opinion, quality-wise, would have rivaled the original trilogy as far as quality, if you would have had those changes. And that's a little vain to say that my edit would be better, but it's my edit, so I get to say what I want. But I remember, you said it, I will say it, from the teaser trailer that came out on Black Friday of 2014, it was November 28th, if you go back and watch that, and you're in your head of, you love the original trilogy. The prequels maybe have left a bad taste in your mouth, but Star Wars is coming back. Here's J.J. Abrams. Here's the stage, sir. And you see that 88-second teaser trailer. Everyone, for the most part, is in agreement that it feels like Star Wars. It's an X factor. It's a feeling. It's all about the eye test. I don't think Star Wars fans could put it in a thesis somewhere. We just know it when we see it, and we know when we don't see it. So us being very critical and nitpicky, that trailer just got us. It got us hooked, and I honestly say that feeling left me right out of the theater. I went back. I saw it 6 times in theaters. And, as this a transition into the other ones, I've had no desire to go see another Star Wars movie 6 times in theaters. So, which we will get into. But you are absolutely right, Nate. It felt like Star Wars. I was so happy about it. The merchandising, everything around it. It felt epic again. And I hadn't felt that way, at least with Star Wars, since, obviously I was a kid. I hadn't felt that way since Revenge of the Sith. But I was a kid seeing Revenge of the Sith. I wasn't an adult looking at the prequels, so that's just for me. It had been a decade since I felt that way in a movie theater, and it was really cool to be amongst friends and have people like yourself to talk about it with.
You brought up the original Black Friday teaser trailer. Let me talk about that just for a second, then we'll move on to the real breaking point for the franchise. I remember getting up early because I wanted to do a trailer reaction video, and I still hate that video to this day because it's all crooked and I chopped off my own head, but I didn't care because I needed to get up early and get it as soon as it came out, because that's how you get the views, because I was desperate for views at the time. But I remember, I think there were tears of joy on my part. I genuinely believe that when you saw the Falcon kind of do that barrel roll and take out the TIE fighters, and then remember showing it to my parents later. And my dad, whenever I show him trailers, he's normally pretty stoic and pretty reserved. Then the final shot shows up when the Millennium Falcon shows up, and he's just got this big old grin on his face like, yes, that is Star Wars. And it's like that just uniting theme of everyone comes back to those original Star Wars movies and just, yep, that's the safe space right there. That's the safe zone that everyone loves. Then it all goes downhill after that. I think we can't just jump into Last Jedi. I think we need to address the issues that Lucasfilm was starting to have leading up to Last Jedi. So, at Star Wars Celebration, you were supposed to have Josh Trank take the stage, but he was suddenly ill and not at all fired whatsoever from his behavior on Fan 4 Stick. We'd find out a few weeks later that he was fired, in which ended up being a slew of directors that had issues with Lucasfilm. So he got fired. A certain movie called Rogue One would come out before Last Jedi, which I know you have a lot of backstory with Rogue One and discussions about like the reshoots and everything else. At the end of this, we will rank all the Disney era Star Wars movies, and I'll give a spoiler alert now. Rogue One is dead last for me. I hate that movie. I think that was kind of the first chink in the armor of Lucasfilm because of how it was handled, and it would be a foreshadowing to how upper management would handle movies going forward. So Rogue One didn't fracture the fan base like Last Jedi would, but I think that's kind of where that's where the first pebble started to fall that would eventually create the rock slide that we're in the middle of right now. So Force Awakens is the top of the mountain. We're super excited to be getting more Star Wars movies. Then we get the new one. We have Rian Johnson announced as director. And I'm going to say something very controversial right now. I was never on board with him as a director. Ever. Because
I would agree. I saw Looper and I was like, it was okay, but I never once thought this is
I never thought
amazing.
Looper was that good either. So I was just like, That being said, I owe a huge apology to Rian Johnson because he so far has the best movie of 2019 with Knives Out. I adore that movie. It is so good. But from the get-go, I never thought he was the best choice for Last Jedi. Now, I will preface this by saying I don't hate Last Jedi. I like it more than some other people do. That being said, it does have a lot of issues that people either seem to think it's the best movie ever created in the whole Star Wars universe or an abomination of filmmaking that should never have been made. I'm somewhere in the middle. There's a lot of things that I like and a lot of things that I don't think work from a narrative standpoint, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Michael, what are some of your earliest memories specifically with Last Jedi?
So I remember seeing the first trailer. At that time, I had my own podcast with Stefan, Sorry About the Mess podcast, and we covered a trailer breakdown for that first trailer that came out for it, and it was very, very intriguing. Some of the shots in there, a lot of the new ships, the commentary on basically on Kylo and will he or will he not kill Leia. This is what it was alluded to in that trailer. But I will tell you, I don't have as much remembrance of that whole time period because of what came afterwards. So leading up to it, we got our tickets, and we unlike The Force Awakens, the websites did not crash, and we went back to the same theater that we saw The Force Awakens. I saw Rogue One in the year prior to that, and actually this year is our fourth consecutive year doing this very thing, of where we get to see a Star Wars film in the same theater, and so in that way it's pretty cool. However, really the Last Jedi for me was it didn't get a standing ovation, but people were really happy, and I remember coming home. And my mom and dad were like, so how was it? And I was like, it was really, really good. But it was almost as if the tone of my voice betrayed the words that came out, because I think it was me really wanting to like it versus me having to process. I had to process The Last Jedi. I did not have to process The Force Awakens, if that makes sense. I had to really kind of go deeper into what I saw happen. And for me, I'll get into it, but I'll get into it after you talk about it, but I don't think it was a good thing that I had to process a Star Wars movie.
Yeah. The only thing I remember about the lead up to Episode 8 is at the time on my YouTube channel, I was mainly just doing fart around videos, just kind of for fun, just doing different film-related things. So for Episode 8, for May the 4th, before Episode 8 came out, so this was a few months before, I wanted to do something different to really challenge myself. So I did, at the time, my most ambitious and the most work I ever put into a video called How Episode 8 Could Work. And I still really enjoyed that, and I still think there's a lot of story elements in there that I probably should have gone with, like a whole double turn, which is something that the marketing really teased, that Rey may turn evil and Kylo may turn good. But I had a whole story pitch for Episode 8, more or less my whole fan fiction, which... that is, I think, a big part of the reason why people hate Last Jedi is it didn't do what they wanted it to do, which I think is never a good thing when you take out your frustration with something that a director does because it's not what you would have done. Well, you're not a Hollywood director. That being said, I was never mad that they didn't go with my direction. Was more just curious with some of the decisions that they did go with, but I don't blame them like a lot of other people do I was wrong about Rey's parents or this, that, or the other thing. I I stuck my foot in my mouth when Last Jedi was coming out. I distinctly remember this. Again, I get out of the theater to find a text from you going, it was really good. And I'm just like, I think it was just, I had a really good crowd experience. So I'm just like all high on adrenaline going, that was one of the best Star Wars movies ever. I think top 3, like super, super adrenaline rushed. And you're just like, I don't know if I'd go that far. Like I could immediately sense your caution, and that made me double back. I'm just like, well, maybe it really isn't that good. And on subsequent watches, I'm just like, how much adrenaline was going through me at the time that I said that on the record? It's one of the few, actually, my mind has drastically changed on the movie over time. That being said, it was a great theater-going experience, but you're right. The crowd reaction for most of the movie wasn't nearly the same level as Force Awakens, save for one moment. The moment when Kylo Ren kills Snoke and the throne room scene when he teams up with Rey. That was the most deafening sound I've ever heard in a theater up until Avengers Assemble, which that was like concert level in my theater. But when they teamed up, I cheered. I was so ecstatic. But then a few minutes later, I was just like, that's weird. That seems to me more like a Return of the Jedi type moment, not an Empire Strikes Back type moment. Why are we doing that in the middle of the trilogy? And there goes the problem of once you start pulling on the Knives Out sweater, it starts to unravel, to the point that the sweater just isn't going to be there anymore. And I kept pulling on threads in Last Jedi of, wait, that does, no, what? To the point that I've just gotten more and more frustrated the more I think about it, of just like, Rian Johnson is a great director, and I like Last Jedi as a solo movie, but as a continuation of the story established in Force Awakens, it is a really bad continuation of a narrative. But also, there's a lot of things that I clearly must have missed the first time I watched Last Jedi that infuriate me now. Like, I clearly missed the first time I watched how disrespectful Last Jedi is in his treatment of Admiral Akbar, who deserved so much better than how he went out.
I will say, though, he has been more propped up in the EU and by fans, and I don't know if fans should drive content. But I do think you can't just purposely kill Admiral Akbar, because you could have had him die, for example, and now had a character mention it. But because he's mentioned, and in the fact they decide to kill him off screen, it does
so offhandedly
seem like a little bit of a middle finger.
Yeah, so
it feels like a middle finger, does it not?
It really does, of just so half effort. Oh yeah, we killed Admiral Akbar. It reminds me, I hate to keep bringing up Zack Snyder, it reminds me of how in Batman v Superman they just kind of haphazardly killed Jimmy Olsen, of like, well, we didn't really know what to do with him, so we just killed him off. Like, no, that's a really kind of important character to Superman's mythos, and you just kind of, one, you made him a soldier for 1 and 2, you just randomly killed him off. I'm not saying Admiral Akbar is like a critical character to Star Wars, but he definitely does still have a very important role in the hearts of Star Wars fans, and to just kind of throw him off to the wayside, like quite a few elements in this movie, just really didn't work for me. Also, the cloud was over this movie from its release with the whole passing of Carrie Fisher thing, so that there was absolutely that in the air when you're watching it, of just like knowing, well, until Rise of Skywalker came out, assuming this was Carrie Fisher's last role as Leia. So there's a couple times in the movie you're just like, all right, this is Leia's goodbye. Okay, no, this is Leia's goodbye. There's like 3 chances in this movie of Leia probably should have died, but they didn't. I think it would have been for the best, had, not saying they needed to kill Leia, but definitively end her story, like write her out somehow. But yeah, it kind of made for an awkward experience. And I feel like we've gone this far without talking about it. The worst thing about this movie, Canto Bight. Even in the theater, I hated this. It's the perfect analogy was when I was watching the Nostalgia Critic review of Last Jedi. They're talking about how great the dynamic between Rey and Kylo Ren is. Like, we're learning about all these cool new Force powers, and then the characters playing Finn and Rose just pop up in front of the viewer, just like, "Hey guys, let's go back to our story." No, thanks. We're learning about the Force. That's cool to us. We'll get back to that in a little bit. That's boring. Let's go back to Canto Bight. That's so much more interesting. I'm going. That is more or less how the movie treats it. Of Canto Bight is so important to the story, and it's really not. Like, you can drop the whole Canto Bight, literally everything, and nothing about the movie changes.
That's bad filmmaking.
There's a lot that's not The Last Jedi that, unfortunately, if it doesn't happen, doesn't change the movie. I didn't talk about this in Force Awakens, but my favorite character from Force Awakens absolutely got the shaft in Last Jedi, and it still pisses me off to this day. And I hope they justify it in Rise of Skywalker, and I think they will. What the hell happened to Poe Dameron's character?
Yeah, he definitely has a moment of, I mean, he actually has character development in the movie, but here's the problem. The character development, you mentioned it earlier, the continuation, doesn't seem like the same character from the very first, from The Force Awakens.
Nope.
Seems like they're developing a different version of him. So, because he definitely goes through from the very beginning to the very end, but he just seems like a doofus.
Yeah, he was a leader in Force Awakens, like a competent leader who, yes, he was a little bit reckless, but at the same time, he seemed like he was more or less in line to be a general. Like, he seemed like he was good in leadership. And then Last Jedi comes along and is, he's a loose cannon that no one trusts. I'm like, are you sure about that? And I'm not gonna go into the whole Holdo thing. Enough people have complained about that, but her character was, honestly, that should have been Princess Leia that was scolding Poe the whole movie, not some random character that we're gonna meet and then have to kill off, spend barely any time with.
I'll say everything. It's The Last Jedi. I think is a. I don't even want to say it's a good movie because of the Canto Bight sequence. It's hard for me to get away with that because there are moments I think that are brilliant. Say what you want about the Holdo sacrifice, but from a purely visual standpoint, artistic design, the Holdo sacrifice sequence is absolutely breathtaking. There's been a few moments in theaters where I have gasped because it was just so shocking visually. And again, the sound design, where basically the lack of sound design, absolutely brilliant. It's still one of my favorite Star Wars moments in history. And that is where you see the brilliance of filmmaking. I always wanted to see, like, when kind of C-3PO was talking about, there's some gab in in A New Hope about the idea when they come out of hyperspace and they believe they've come through like an asteroid field, and Han talks about the idea of of what you have to do as far as calculating a jump to light speed. And we actually get to see the consequences and the kinetic force and the physics involved when a ship going at the speed of light runs into another ship, and basically the domino effect that happens. Like, that is so cool to see. Unfortunately, like you said, it's with a character that doesn't really matter. It has no weight. I don't have any emotion to it. And when you talk about a movie that's also set, like, from the beginning of The Force Awakens to the end of The Last Jedi, we've spent a week with these characters, and these are two major motion pictures that have been taken that physically, like, in real time, take place 2 years apart. The original trilogy, I will fight this. People don't agree with me, Nate, on this, but I'm going to say from a narrative perspective, from the beginning, or from the New Hope to the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, it's basically 3 years in that timeline. Yep. Luke Skywalker looks different, sounds different,
there's a car accident
acts
to blame for
different.
That, but...
Yeah. I will say yes, but he also looks older as well, looks more mature. And just like the Harry Potter films, with those characters that grow up over time, you see him use the Force for the first time, for the most part. You see him grab his lightsaber in the ice cave with the Wampa sequence, and it's believable. Why is it believable? Because you know that there's been time that has passed.
There's an arc. There's a story for Luke.
Yes,
he's changed as
exactly.
a person. My big issue
he
with
has
our protagonist, well,
Yes.
our main protagonist in these new ones, I haven't talked about it yet. I liked Rey for the most part in Force Awakens. A lot of people are just like, she's a Mary Sue, whatever. I still don't think people really know what that means when they say it in arguments. I think in Force Awakens, Rey is fine. But as we've seen for these movies overarching is she pales in comparison to Luke, because my big issue with Rey is she has no arc. She never changes. They keep saying she does, but she's always, I don't know where I come from. I'm going to learn about some things in the Force. That's both Force Awakens and Last Jedi, and seemingly what we're getting for Rise of Skywalker. There is no growth as a character. Where Luke is in A New Hope as an annoying, whiny brat on a desert to full-fledged, all-powerful Jedi by the end of Return of the Jedi, that's a journey. And Rey, more or less, is the same character in every single movie. I've also said this before, she never loses, which is so frustrating, because loss is how and when you relate to the characters in a movie. Of Luke losing his hand in Empire only to come back stronger in Return of the Jedi because he's had to buckle down on his training. Loss makes a character more interesting. It means they're still human. They can still feel pain. Having Rey never lose in any fight whatsoever damages her character, because it more or less makes her super unrelatable. Of, well, no harm can come to her. That's why I've almost said from the beginning, in terms of characters, and I know some people absolutely hate this character, but for me, Kylo Ren is 1,000 times more interesting than Rey, because he actually has an interesting story and has moments of confliction as a character and has grown as a character. The Kylo Ren we see in Rise of Skywalker
you're right.
is not the Kylo Ren that we see in Force Awakens. So, conspiracy theory, maybe he's the hero of the trilogy.
So, well, we could go find that out. We just have to go over to Reddit and read all the spoilers.
Don't you cast that evil on me.
You're right.
I've done well so far.
That's so funny. Yeah, there's a lot of disjointedness. I think from the very beginning, not having a cohesive story written about where you want everything to go, massive mistake. I have no idea how that actually happens in a leading particular, like as a leadership. Like, here's the narrative we want to tell at the very beginning, and here's where we want it to be by the end. So at the very end, we want to get here. I think it's also foolish to say here's how we map it out every step of the way, because like you said, fans have different reactions to some things, and once you put some things on screen, things need to change. So I don't think you need to put all your eggs in one basket, but to at least say here's where we want to end up, because this is how we best end the Skywalker saga. I don't think they even had that in mind. I think that's evident by the fact they had 3 different directors. They fired different directors. They had different people writing these. They had no idea what was really going on. Like you said, the lack of cohesion between Episode 7 and Episode 8 is so apparent. It feels like it was one's a dream and the other one's reality as far as what our characters are and we're designed to be. From the very first drafts of the scripts. So it's that, and like how that happens on such a massive level, I just don't understand. But I will say that it's the closeness. Episode 8 happens right after Episode 7. I think that is a massive narrative choice when it comes to motion picture, film, and trilogy. There's got to be time passing. And now, unless you're telling the Lord of the Rings type of thing where you're supposed to have it, like because you're following predetermined source material, that I totally understand. It's a different argument here.
With Lord of the Rings, you're right, because the characters themselves are on a time crunch. They have to destroy this ring because they're being chased.
Yes, they have to. In Star Wars, every film has time passing between it. Every single one. It's part of it. That's how you can subconsciously have characters grow or develop new personality traits, have different powers, physically, even physically look different. All of that buys into the factor, like, so when a character does something different, you don't have to have a bunch of exposition. They just do things and it's believable because that's just life. It's like when you haven't seen a friend in a year and they look different, or they have a different vocabulary because they picked up on a different words that different habits. But unless their whole DNA has changed, usually it's not a bad thing. It's usually it's like, hey, yeah, hey, you've changed in these moderate ways over the course of a year. But to say that you're going to tell a cohesive story in Star Wars, and like you said, the lack of character development, like I just don't see any character development, at least from a continuation standpoint. It does seem like The Rise of Skywalker is going to have that. It definitely feels like a J.J. Abrams film, but I gotta say, man, I was disappointed, and to talk about the other ones, I was disappointed in Rogue One. I thought that was mismarketed. I thought the movie we're gonna get was very dark and gritty, and I still applaud them for still, going with a darker ending of all the protagonists dying and actually sacrificing themselves. But Solo, I think, honestly, you want to talk about, if you want to talk about the most egregious thing for me, it was Solo. One, to abandon the December release date was the first red flag, and then to abandon any sort of crawl with Rogue One. And I remember if you would have told me back in 2012, Nate, that I was going to watch a Star Wars movie 6 years from then at that date, and I truly, walking out of theater, could have cared less if I saw it or not, I would have said, well, no, you're wrong. That's not right. And the fact that I saw this on opening night, I saw Solo, and the theater was not even half full. The movie just starts like any other movie because there's no crawl, there's no main theme, and it just kind of starts. One of my friends who's a huge Star Wars fan was late to the movie. There was like no wait. And even though I know Bob Iger definitely, he made public statements regretting the fact of all of that, but the fact they'd have the audacity to just try to slip in this kind of Star Wars story, I thought was the biggest disrespect to what the genre was, and that is where they lost me. They lost any faith in me as a Star Wars fan. I immediately checked out with Disney saying, this has a Star Wars brand, but it's not Star Wars to me. And because of I took that as blatant disrespect. And so Rise of Skywalker seems more like Star Wars, just like The Force Awakens.
You brought up Bob Iger blaming Solo.
So.
What bothered me about that is he put the blame in the wrong spot. He's just like, oh, the reason why Solo didn't do well is because it came too soon after Last Jedi. No, moron. The reason why Solo didn't do well is we were telling you to your face for months and for years, Solo is not a movie we want to see. It is a character. No. If you're going to do it, it has to be with Han Solo, but we don't really need an origin story for Han Solo. It's a character that doesn't need it. We want an Obi-Wan project. We want a Boba Fett project. We want literally anything but Solo. And just like, nah, you guys want Solo. You just don't know you want it. And sure enough, we didn't want it. Then they tried to find this, that, and the other excuse for why it failed when people were saying forever, this is a movie we do not want and we will not go see. And Disney thought they knew better. They thought they knew what the people wanted and stuck to their guns, and it blew up in their face. And it still pisses me off to this day because the failure of Rogue One and the failure of Solo is the reason we never got our Obi-Wan movie. They're more or less, if you read between the lines now, Ewan McGregor has been attached to this Obi-Wan movie for years and was supposed to happen, but because of the failures of Solo and of Rogue One, it got turned into this Disney Plus series, which thankfully we're getting that, but Solo was a project that never should have happened, and they kept placing the blame in the wrong spot. Also, I love Lord and Miller's directors. They were absolutely the wrong choice for Solo.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's just go get out the new bright, shiny toy and then regretting it afterwards. It's like almost buyer's remorse.
That's all of Kathleen Kennedy's run at Lucasfilm, though, is she gets the sexy names to direct movies because they have big hits before, not necessarily considering if they're the right fits for the films that they're doing. J.J. Abrams was a good fit for Force Awakens. Rian Johnson was a big name coming off of Looper, but was he the right choice for Last Jedi? That's for you people at home to determine. I'm not going to tell you how to think. We will definitely differ on this one, I'm sure. I've never thought that Gareth Edwards was a good choice for Rogue One because if there's one weakness that Gareth Edwards has, it's human characters. I hate the humans in the 2014 Godzilla. They are so bland and uninteresting, except for the one that they killed 10 minutes into the movie, which I still think was a dumb choice. He has issues with human characters, and that's something you really need when the movie is more or less a spy thriller and a heist movie. You need good, compelling characters, and I hate almost all the characters in Rogue One that are humans. K2SO was a one shining, redeeming thing. Lord and Miller, great directors. Poor choice for Solo. It just does not fit. It's like Christopher Nolan directing a comedy. It just doesn't work. They're great with their own lane, but don't make them pop out of their bubble. And Kathleen Kennedy has shown time and time again, she gets it mainly for the headlines, not for what's a good fit.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. I like the 2014 Godzilla because I wasn't expecting to even care about the human characters, because I'm there to see Godzilla, and I got Godzilla, not nearly enough, but I still liked it. The reason why I thought it was going to be good is because of that leaked Star Wars Celebration footage of what the Obi-Wan and the narrative and just the whole pitch of the film, and then the concept art and kind of like the influence of Saving Private Ryan and just like what it was going to cost. It was going to seem to be very, very gritty, so I was on board with that. Obviously, half of the marketing campaign was misleading. There's the reshoots, and the characters dying didn't have, because like the original ending was that all of them were supposed to die at Darth Vader's hand. That would have been amazing to see. Very dark and everything. I understand why Disney didn't want to have their name on it, but I thought that would have been made for a better story. Basically, I think Gareth Edwards' vision was too dark and too gritty for Lucasfilm, and they decided to change it, and they had a little bit of a disagreement on that. That's why they brought in Tony Gilroy, and I think he did a very inferior job to what Gareth Edwards would have done, but it was more lighthearted because of how they split up the last act. They split up all the characters so they could die their own heroic deaths that are a little bit more lighthearted. That's why you have like the whole, if you watch the trailer and then watch the film, there's a lot of shots that aren't even in there, and you can tell, I mean, it was one of the most blatant re-edits you've ever seen versus marketing versus final product. So I think Gareth Edwards had a pretty good film, and they didn't allow him to do it. And I think he disagreed with that, and that's why they brought in a new director to at least do the reshoots. It's pretty simple to me to put that puzzle piece together. So what I expected and what I got from Rogue One is what was the most disappointing thing. It, however, is my second favorite of what we've gotten so far. I still don't like the film, but objectively I can't say that it's a bad film because I think it's competently done. Honestly.
I will give enormous amounts of credit though to Gareth Edwards in how he handled the situation he was absolutely professional. Same thing with J.J. Abrams. There has been some talk for many years now that J.J. and Rian Johnson do not get along, and have not for a lot of years. And these are just rumors. They've never been confirmed that J.J., while he may say on the surface that he approved of Last Jedi, he was not a fan of some of the things that were changed from his narrative in Last Jedi. But he's remained very professional in interviews, being like, "Oh yeah, Last Jedi was great to watch as a fan." This, that, and the other thing. Like both him and Gareth Edwards, super professional, great company guys, and I think that's why Lucasfilm hasn't thrown them under the bus like they have some other directors. But we could talk about the mishandling of Lucasfilm all day. Let's get back into some positives. Let's go into our MVP section, because there are some redeeming things in both Force Awakens and Last Jedi. So let's talk about the bests. Michael, who is your MVP for The Force Awakens?
BB-8. I'm very partial to droids because they play such a key part. He basically steals the show as far as just like the adorable factor, and really kind of buys into the fact that you're like, oh, I don't necessarily miss R2 or C-3PO as much as I thought I would, because this new droid is just awesome. Obviously, he carries the key to to Luke Skywalker, which is basically the whole MacGuffin of the movie. And I think BB-8's personality is fantastic, and he I think adds so much to the film itself. And I love the character design, his personality, everything about it. So he's my MVP for Force Awakens.
Mine is very, very close to it. It's the character that's introduced after BB-8 in Force Awakens. So BB-8's the first character we see in Force Awakens, followed closely behind by my MVP, Poe Dameron. So Poe Dameron doesn't get nearly as much screen time as he deserves in Force Awakens, but he has probably the most important job in all of Star Wars, which was get the audience back in. So I say that because he's the first human character we've met since the prequels, and a lot of people hate the characters in the prequels because they're not written well. So the pressure's really on Oscar Isaac's performance as Poe Dameron to get us back to caring about human characters again, but also to like them, just to understand them again, just to make it feel like Star Wars. And almost right off the bat when he's talking to Lauren Santeca, that's all right. But the moment right off the bat they're just like, all right, I'm glad I got your pop figure, is when Kylo Ren's interrogating him and he's just staring at him, and Poe's just like, so do I talk? Do you talk? How does this work?
Yeah, who talks first? That's yes.
Do you want to take off the mask? It's a little hard to understand you with the whole breathing apparatus of just like, he's not trying to be Han Solo, which I thought going into it he might just be a Han Solo clone. He's not Han Solo. He's Poe Dameron, and he's a lot of fun. So then when Finn breaks him out, he's just like, why are you breaking me out? Because it's the right thing to do. You need a pilot. I need a pilot. Just those little interactions that were so desperately missing from the prequels. Just a sense of fun. And besides my favorite scene, which we'll talk about later, one of the scenes that gave me the biggest smile on my face the whole movie was not seeing the Falcon again, as great as that was, but it's when Finn and Poe escape. And it's just a sense of immediate camaraderie between the two of them, and just fun of FN2187. I don't like that. Finn. How about I call you Finn? And then they shoot down the other TIE fighters and the lasers, and they're having fun together. And heaven forbid we have fun in a Star Wars movie. And I'll talk more about him because he's in my favorite moment of Force Awakens, but I'll talk about that later. Poe is just... he was the character that we all needed to be reintroduced into the Star Wars world. He was the perfect character for that, of fun, but not trying to be someone else. Also not related to somebody else, which is something these new movies rely a little too heavily on. Also, I will give, he's not my MVP, but an honorable mention to Adam Driver as Kylo Ren. I thought he was phenomenal in The Force Awakens, considering all the different things that's asked of him in that role. I said at the time, if you take just A New Hope and just Force Awakens, compare those two movies side by side, Kylo Ren is more interesting than Darth Vader, which got me in a lot of fights at the time, but I still stand by that.
Yeah, that'll do that for you.
But I still stand by that, because in Episode 4, Vader does literally nothing, whereas Kylo, you get more of his backstory and he's more compelling of a character. Now, as the movies progress, Vader became one of the greatest villains of all time, and Kylo is still Kylo, but Kylo still leagues more interesting than a lot of his co-stars. But Adam Driver continues to be, like, he really burst on the stage in Star Wars, and I've kind of been following his career ever since. He's a phenomenal actor, and he really showcased that for me for the first time in Force Awakens. Move on to Last Jedi. Who is your MVP for Last Jedi?
Oh goodness. Well, I have to say Luca. It's a pretty easy answer, and it's probably the stereotypical one, just because of what he does. I do like the whole see you around kid. That is amazing. It's brilliant. I mean, he really does. You want to talk about with Kylo actually having more character development, I think he's the most consistently well fleshed out character, and that moment of him still not being able to best, his uncle is just awesome, and the fact that Luke is just exhibiting his mastery of the Force is the best part of The Last Jedi, in my opinion. and seeing Kylo, just his anger just doesn't work out, and he's kind of just left to wonder. Okay, I've killed my master. I'm still obviously incredibly inferior to the light side here, and Rey's gotten away. What do I do now? So I think it leaves all of that leaves him in a great like and fascinating stance, and for Luke, for him to come in, at least have a moment with his sister there, wink at C-3PO, which seemed more Mark Hamill than it did Luke Skywalker, which I still think is such an odd directorial choice. But that aside, it's got to be Luke, just because of what he does to help save the rebels, at least distract them enough to get out.
Yeah, I completely agree. Mine is Luke as well. Not because of the big action scenes, but I know a lot of people wanted Luke to return as the great Jedi Knight that he has always been. I actually didn't mind bum Luke, because if you meet somebody that you haven't seen in 30 years, spoiler alert, they're not going to be the same person. It's like, I often compare things to wrestling, but it's so true. Say there's a great wrestler from years and years ago, like Stone Cold Steve Austin was the biggest name in the Attitude Era. If he came back and wrestled today, I'm sorry, he's not going to be the same wrestler that he was in the 90s. He's a different person. His body isn't up to snuff anymore, but he's still entertaining. He just has to go about things in a different way, and I see Luke the same way. Obviously, he's despite what people want, he is not the main focus of this trilogy. If you want Luke, go back and watch the original trilogy. These movies are about someone else now. He's the Obi-Wan now. And if you want Obi-Wan stories, go to the prequels. These movies are not about Luke. He's there to be a supporting character, and that's fine. And I liked how he portrayed it. I think he could have done better, but I don't blame Mark Hamill for it, especially considering Mark Hamill apparently was very vocal in his disagreements with Rian Johnson, which raised all kinds of red flags before the movie. But given how much he hated what his character was made to do, Mark Hamill kind of conducts himself with his professionalism and just really, to me, brings his acting A game in this role. In terms of sheer acting ability, this is the best Luke Skywalker we've ever seen. Of just the different complexities that he's asked to bring this time around is different than anything he had to do in the original trilogy, and that's for the better. And then that final showdown is just fantastic. It's a different Luke, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. And this is coming from me, who Luke is one of my favorite characters in the entire series, but you don't want to completely change everything, but you can't be so glued to the past that you can't accept anything from the future. And I think that's a lot of the issues people have with Last Jedi is Luke wasn't how I remember it. Well, nothing is how you remember it when you were a kid. Like, if you watch the original trilogy, some of it isn't always the cinematic masterpiece that you remember it to be. But you have this sense of nostalgia that's roasted to glasses. So eventually, current generations will have the same thoughts about these new ones, I think. It's just a matter of time for all these, for some reason, people crapped on the prequels, and now they're like revered masterpieces, which still leave me scratching my head going, wait, is it cool to like the prequels now? I'm confused. But considering how much he hated the role, I applaud Mark Hamill enormously for his role as Luke Skywalker. Now we'll transition to our favorite moments. Force Awakens, I actually had to think about this one just because I enjoy so much of the movie. I had to think about one moment in particular that stood out to me. And
the Force Awakens?
There's so much of the movie.
Oh, okay. Okay. Gotcha. Oh, you hadn't. I thought you're going Last Jedi. Are you just agreeing with me, or now you're just giving me your two?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
No
My
worries.
apologies. Okay.
So, yeah,
Sorry.
Force Awakens, I enjoyed so much of Force Awakens that it took me a little bit to narrow it down, but then when I thought about it, I was just like, oh, yeah, it's obvious. So I said Poe Dameron was my favorite character, and he's responsible for my favorite scene. And that's when Finn, Han, and Chewie are surrounded at Maz Kanata's castle on Takodana, and then all of a sudden, you hear the great music by John Williams. Dun 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 dun. It's like the March of the Resistance or the Resistance theme or something, and all of a sudden you see like 3 or 4 X-wings gliding across the water, which we've never seen X-wings like fly this low before in a movie, like gliding across the water, like kicking up water, and you're just like, oh, that's an awesome, beautiful shot. And then the dog fight around Takodana was fantastic, because I remember at Star Wars Celebration they asked Oscar Isaac, so what's Poe Dameron like? And his first thing out of his mouth was, he's the best pilot in the galaxy. And I'm just like, all right, ego. I highly doubt that, but whatever. And then in that shot, in a single take, you see Poe Dameron just shoot down like 7 TIE fighters just back to back, and you're like, oh, kill streak. This dude knows what he's talking about. All right, you are the best pilot in the galaxy. And then they forget it for Last Jedi. But the music that accompanies that, just seeing the X-wings gliding across the water. And also, I have a major crush on Poe Dameron's X-wing. That black and gold, the black and orange is gorgeous. I love that scene so much. That was really well done.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with you. I mean, I can't disagree with any of your things. I'm just going to argue more semantics. But yeah, the MVPs of this are a little bit more, I think, clear cut than the previous the prequel trilogy or the sequel trilogy. Just because, again, we've mentioned it before. There's not a whole lot of characters and arcs that really make more sense sometimes, whereas I don't find myself rooting for the same amount of characters or being as invested. But Poe, at least for The Force Awakens, absolutely, he was just one of those hotshot pilots that had the swagger to go with it, and you could tell he was confident, and so yeah, I couldn't agree more, honestly. I obviously he's connected directly to BB-8, so I mean, basically the same.
So would
choice.
that be your favorite moment as well? Is the Takodana fight?
Oh, that's hard. It's hard actually to go against that the actual shots of Finn and Poe together in the TIE fighter sequence. That was awesome. Favorite sequence. My favorite shot of the movie is not even in the movie. It's from that Black Friday teaser of when you see Kylo Ren for the first time. When you see that,
hilt.
Why
wasn't that in the movie? That was a great shot that I remember the internet hating at the time.
I have no idea that was my favorite shot actually, and it wasn't even included. Favorite moment of The Force Awakens, if I go back and just continue to look at it, has got to be the. Not because I like the moment, but it's the imagery of what happens when Han is trying to get Ben to come back, and when Starkiller Base begins to fire, that casts a lot of red on Kylo's face, with that skylight that's on that walkway. And he starts to grip the lightsaber harder. Is the red? It kind of goes back to why you love that sequence in Return of the Jedi, when Luke's face is half in light, half in darkness, and he has like that moment of choice and that fury and that rage. I think that was really good direction. So it's my favorite art moment, but I laugh every time I'll go back and watch it. I also have struggled with sanitation. Good, and also that's not how the Force works. That was awesome to me. That was the biggest laugh in the theater, was that line from Han after he's finding out that Finn was just a nobody.
So I used to really enjoy the Han Solo death scene, and then I saw the bad lip reading for Force Awakens, and it completely ruins that scene for me. Have you seen that video?
Oh. I have not, but now I'm not going to.
It's so funny. So it's just like Kylo talking to Han Solo, and it's bad lip reading. He's just like, I made a finger puppet. And then like these little finger puppets show up, and Han Solo's just like, all right, that's weird. Just like, oh, nope, now I'm going to be thinking about finger puppets whenever I see Han Solo die. Skipping ahead to Last Jedi, I'm going to go out and... Well, actually, no. I know for a fact we do not. I was about to say, I assume we have the same favorite scene, but I know for a fact we do not. I'm going to guess yours is the Holdo scene.
Yeah, it is just because
she dies?
just be yeah, well that's funny. Just because it's one of those moments that I don't really get in cinema anymore, where it just took my breath away. Like you said, it made me gasp. It was like visually stunning, and I'm so glad they have a 4K version of it on YouTube that I watch every now and then.
Fair enough. And obviously, I've talked about mine enough. It's when Rey and Kylo team up in Snoke's throne room. As terribly choreographed as that fight scene is, like, do not watch that in slow motion. It is. I could choreograph a better fight. Now, if you told me Rey and Kylo team up to fight, I don't know, the Praetorian Guard or the Knights of Ren, somebody, and the fight is choreographed by Ray Park, sign me up.
For sure.
That I'm more interested in. It was a great moment. Not necessarily the best choreographed moment, but a great theater experience nonetheless. All right, now to close out the show, we will rank all the Disney era, so the 2 sequel trilogy movies so far, as well as the 2 anthology movies, which, can we acknowledge that A Star Wars Story is the stupidest subtitle ever?
Yeah, if they kept would have like anthology, I thought it'd been so much better. I don't.
Yeah,
I
a
don't
Star
get
Wars
it.
anthology
I don't
sounds better,
understand.
but whatever. A Star Wars story just sounds like a fairy tale.
So are we going best to worst?
Worst to best.
What are
Worst to
we
best.
doing here? Okay.
So
All right. After you, sir.
my worst by a landslide, because to me there's only 2 redeeming things about this movie, and that is K2SO and Vader murdering fools like he's on a kill streak in Battlefront, and that is Rogue One. I hate this movie so much. I've only seen this movie twice, and that is more than enough for me. That being said, I find it odd that I own this movie on Blu-ray, but I don't have my number 3 movie on Blu-ray, which is Solo. And I've seen that movie also twice. But I like Solo more than I like Rogue One. Barely. There's a little bit more positives to it for me. The pacing's a little bit better. I hate the first half of Rogue One. There's so much bouncing around and so much unexplained. Clearly, this was cut on the editing floor. Whereas Solo, it plays it a little too safe at times, but I get what they're going for at least. Plus, there's more positives to me of, I don't know what it is. I don't think Alden Ehrenreich was a great Solo, but this scene where he's playing Sabak against Donald Glover's Lando the first time, both of them are absolutely nailing the role. I don't know what changed for that scene, but he was perfect for that. And I'm not alone when I speak the praises of Donald Glover's performance as Lando. Like, if you told me we're getting a Lando movie with him, that I'm more interested in than getting another Solo movie. He was phenomenal in that role. But the movie is so incredibly forgettable. You just shoehorned a perfectly good cameo into the end of it that I'm sure left so many people confused of going, wait, what? Why is he here? I thought he was like a JCPenney special. Everything's half off, but
that's okay. That's hilarious.
Also, Emilia Clarke continues to prove to me that if she's not in Game of Thrones, then she's just kind of okay as an actress. I completely forget everything about Solo. It was completely uninteresting to me, but it's still better than Rogue One at least. Which naturally leads me to number 2, The Last Jedi, which I think has some good elements, but there's a lot. Last Jedi, to me, there's the most amount of give and take. There's some great explorations of the themes of the Force. Then you've got Canto Bight. You've got some good character work, and then you've got all the other terrible character work. Anything with Rey, Kylo, or Luke is really good. Anything with Holdo, Poe, Finn, or Rose is hot garbage. Yeah, great ending. Really solid beginning, too. The opening fight scene is great. And then there's most of the middle that you have to contend with. And then that naturally leaves my number 1. And my favorite so far is The Force Awakens. I really, really enjoy Force Awakens. I think this is the shot in the arm that the franchise needed so desperately. And I really, really enjoy it. And I'm also going to have my bold prediction now that I think Rise of Skywalker, after I see it, will probably be number 2. I don't think it'll beat Force Awakens, but I think it'll be good. I think it'll be better than Last Jedi, but it won't top Force Awakens, at least in my mind. What's your ranking there, Michael?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief because I really don't have a whole lot to say. At the bottom, where I believe it deserves to be, is The Last Jedi. And then it's Solo for me. I'll say it was completely boring and uninteresting as a Star Wars film. As a sci-fi movie that's a little bit more Western and gunslinging, I think it's pretty good. It's actually the movie that I would be more apt to rewatch. I've only seen it once because I never wanted to really see it any more times, but I need to show my family at some point. The Rogue One, I think, is just a better, more entertaining movie. I still don't like it because I think of the missed opportunities, but if I'm being objective, it is not a bad movie. There are some bad moments in it, but it's the movie looks fantastic. Like, it's shot beautifully, and they tell the cohesive story. The very beginning, though, is all over the place. It's an absolute mess as far as the amount of planets they visit. So that's why it keeps it down. It's a lower tier of quality for me. The Force Awakens is my favorite of this new one just because the movie looks great. It's a reintroduction to Star Wars, but even the novelty aside, really for me, like I said, it feels like Star Wars, but all the aesthetics look great. I think it looks better than The Last Jedi as far as like some of the CGI and art direction. I don't know how it was even possible, but it does in my opinion.
Except for the Raptors. Screw those things.
Yeah, I understand. I hear you. But I was blown away by The Force Awakens. Every other film falls short because it feels like it's trying to force itself into a Star Wars universe. Honestly, it feels like a movie that is set outside of the Star Wars universe. Then the script was converted to add Star Wars like vernacular in it, and then set it in a sci-fi universe or basically a space opera. That's how it feels versus the script and the feel and the flow of The Force Awakens feels like it was always embedded in the Star Wars universe, Star Wars canon. And based on what I've read, I know a lot more than you do about Rise of Skywalker and on purpose. And so I will say this. I am fully expecting The Rise of Skywalker to be my favorite Star Wars film since Return of the Jedi. Like, I have, yes, because of what I know what happens already. Spoilers don't bother me anymore. Spoilers would have bothered me for The Force Awakens, but because I've basically given up on this kind of era of Star Wars, I really don't care that much. But I am fully expecting to absolutely love this movie, and I do have high hopes and expectations. And if they do fall short, that's technically on me. But but at this point, given what it's supposed to be, what I know about it, I want to have high expectations. I don't want to just kind of like, I hope it's mediocre. That's just not how I feel. I want it to be fantastic. I'm expecting it to be great because all of the puzzle pieces are there. And from what I know, I'm expecting to like it more than The Force Awakens and better than all the prequels. So it should be in my top 5 at the end. If it's not, I'm going to be disappointed, Nate. And just being honest with you.
You actually got my excitement up a little bit for Rise of Skywalker. I've slowly been getting more excited, but you just amped me up a little bit more. So thanks for that. I'm excited now.
You're welcome. You're welcome, buddy. It's 2 days. What are you actually seeing?
8:15 Thursday night.
Okay, so you're going to see it ahead of me. So I will still not actually have started the film by the time you get out of your showing. So unlike in years past, I will have a text. My phone will be awaiting a text from you, kind sir, because my movie doesn't start until 11:45.
It's trash. It's like Michael Bay directed it.
Oh, that'll be great. Just please troll me, please.
It's like a Denis Villeneuve art house movie with the lightsabers.
Oh, that's now. Are you seeing it in IMAX?
No,
by
it's
chance?
just standard showing. I will be seeing it in IMAX at some point, just not that opening night.
Gotcha.
Because I don't think I'm seeing it just once.
The reason why I couldn't, I don't think so either. I am seeing it on a 96 by 48 foot screen. It's the largest screen in Michigan, and it's a 4K projector with Dolby Atmos surround sound.
I hate you so much.
So that is why I didn't get the opening show. We got an opening night, just not the first showing. We got the second showing because even before the tickets went on sale, the website already opened, and so there was like tickets available, but not for like a group of people. Like there was like still a couple singles available. So, well.
Fair enough. This has been a fun journey through the Star Wars legacy. I could always talk Star Wars with Michael, as I'm sure he knows very well. Michael, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on these past 3 weeks, and I'm sure we will have you back at some point in the 2020 year to talk movies again on the podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you once again for stepping in. As soon as I knew we were doing Star Wars, I was like, I gotta have Michael on, so it's great to have you on.
Hey, thank you, man. It is a privilege. It's not a right. And anything that I can do in the future to help out, I am here for you. It's been an honor to be a part of the program once again. And thank you, movie fans, for hanging out and having me back. I appreciate it.
Well, I'm sure this will not be the last we hear of Michael on the podcast. Well, what do you guys think about the Star Wars sequel trilogy? Let us know in the comments below. We always like hearing from you guys. And as always, if you'd like to hear more about the Uncharted Media Podcast, subscribe to us on whatever audio platform you're listening to us on, whether that's Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcast, or YouTube. And if you haven't already, subscribe to us on YouTube at Uncharted Media. And as always, stay sharp, movie guys and gals, and may the Force be with you.